If you're in a heat-loving climate or you have a greenhouse, today's video should be pretty helpful for you because we're going to be planting the greenhouse today and everything in it has to be super heat tolerant. Honestly, I probably should have done this a couple of weeks ago because the greenhouse seems to be about like 2 or 3 weeks ahead of the rest of the outside garden. But here we are, things happen, I got sick, and we're just doing the best we can with the time we have. We're gonna go through everything that we're planting today and how I'm planting it. We'll be direct sowing some seeds as well as doing transplants. And we have 3 new beds to work with in the full greenhouse now. So these are 2 by 6 foot beds and they're about 12 inches deep. I just filled them with potting mix and I also set up my Olla system in here. So I'll link the beds and the Olla system for you in case you're interested in either of those. But basically I noticed last year in growing in the 3.5 and 5 gallon nursery pots, things dried out really fast. They got even hotter. So I'm hoping with this setup things stay a little bit more consistently watered and we just have better results overall. I was also able to trial a lot of stuff last year to see what worked well in here and what didn't, because there's things like certain beans that stop producing after the temperature hits like 85 degrees. So if we want to continue to have a productive harvest in here, we have to be pretty mindful of what types of crops we're growing, what versions of those crops we're growing. So I know typically we're talking about my northern climate, it being a little bit cooler here, but if you're somebody that lives in a hotter growing zone, this video might be more helpful to you because we're going to be talking about stuff that thrives in the heat, including some flowers too. I picked up some more flats at the hardware store and I've actually been getting these every year. They always have marigolds in the clearance section, and marigolds last all season, so it's not like with the pansies where they need to kind of be planted already, so they're on clearance. Like, marigolds can be planted anytime and they're supposed to be pretty heat tolerant. This is one I haven't trialed yet, so we're gonna see what happens. And I also have some celosia in here, so we're gonna do some of those as well as some flowers from seed. And then we have a whole bunch of peppers. We're actually doing 12 peppers. But I think what we're gonna do in these beds, since we're doing direct sowing as well as transplants today, start with the transplants. I know where everything's going because I have my grids laid out already, and it's a little bit easier to see my center line here. If you didn't watch my last planting video, we talked a little bit about the hierarchy of things in order of planting and kind of making sure that we're putting things in places where they won't get in the way of each other. So with this setup in particular, I've got like a wall of windows behind everything. So the taller stuff will go in the back and then our trailing plants will continue to go off the outside corners. And the flowers are more of an accent, at least the marigolds and the celosia, but I am putting some taller, bigger flowers in here that will go along the back. I'm really hoping the flowers work out because I would love to have some more color in here other than green. I have a whole lot of stuff spread out just about everywhere right now. This bed has 4 peppers in it. I'm gonna do all different types, but I'm prioritizing like the spicy peppers inside because they need more heat in order to ripen and actually get hot. Jalapeno we're gonna do in this bed. I also have a cayenne outside that I'll grab, and I have a bunch of sweet banana and cubanelle, so that's what we'll do in here. Okay, I'm just gonna start laying out my grid. So this is my halfway point and we need to divide it into thirds. We've got a pepper in the center third here, and then I've got a pepper in this back corner where the Olla tank is. So we'll do a jalapeno back there. I'm not gonna mark these. I don't really care what they are at this point. Like, I'll know when I need to harvest it for sure. And then I've got one spot here for something else, and then this next spot is a pepper, so we'll do, let's see, I'll do a cubanelle in this next spot, and then our last pepper is actually going right here. So we'll do a banana pepper. I get a lot of questions about if I prune my pepper plants. I don't, but it's kind of like up to you. If you live somewhere that's really hot, where you have a long growing season, there's no harm in pruning your pepper plants. But I've just found that it kind of delays their production a little bit. So for me, it's never been worth it. I don't think it makes like a huge difference in how much the plant produces. So we could pull off these kind of bottom leaves, and sometimes I will do that with peppers. Like once I see where it's starting to flower from, I will pull off those lower leaves just to help prevent diseases, but it's not hugely important. with the peppers, in my opinion. I don't think it makes a huge difference. These guys are a little bit floppy, but we'll give them a nice drink. This is our cayenne. I'm only doing one this year. I had so many last year. I hung them to dry in the greenhouse, and I was so excited about it, but honestly, I'm just not a huge hot pepper person. I love jalapenos because I make Meg's jalapeno hot sauce with them, which if you haven't tried it, you need to go to her Instagram and get that recipe off her page from last year because it is so freaking good. I don't like hot sauce. I'm not a hot sauce person, and I will put that hot sauce on everything. I even froze it this year and it freezes really well. So we're doing a lot more jalapenos as a priority this year versus cayennes, but it's nice to have one cayenne plant just for some variety, especially when I'm doing like a big harvest. I like to have lots of different kinds and colors of peppers. There is one celosia going in here, right here. And I say one celosia, but these are kind of small plants, and I know they don't get really crazy big, so I'm probably gonna do a couple in some different colors. These look really good. If you're looking for transplants, like this is a great amount of root development for a transplant where it's not circling the bottom yet. I'm gonna crowd them together a little bit, because this will give me more flexibility too. If there's empty space around them, I can do something else. And then right here, I do have a Swiss chard. So this is kind of a controversial one, and I'll tell you why. So I typically don't love doing Swiss chard from transplants because it can be kind of a diva. It does not like having its roots disturbed. So you have to be really careful. But if you can find a plant like this one where, you know, I was able to check the roots underneath before I actually got it. It wasn't like super root bound. I knew I wasn't going to have to mess with the roots a ton in order to get it transplanted. It's probably going to be fine. Like I did all transplants for my Swiss chard last year and it did really well. And then the only other transplant that I'm doing here is the marigolds, and actually have 3 marigolds going in each bed. I got French marigolds for this bed. So these ones, it's important if you're doing edible marigolds, they need to be the French, not the African marigolds, and they do look different, it will say on the tag generally. But I just want to do one here, another here, and a third one right here. It could be helpful to just kind of lay things out before you start moving them into the ground, just like I just did, because that way you can just, it's kind of like an assembly line, right? Like get them all out in position, then dig them into place. Oh my God, this is so exciting to see some color in here. The marigolds are really easy to save seeds from too, but they take a really long time to grow. So I just tend to get them as transplants because, like I said, I can always find them on super clearance. Like I got this whole pack of like 8 for $2. Like I'm all about letting somebody else do the work for me when it's that cheap. That's all the transplants going into this bed. So we'll grab our seeds next and move these out of the way. As always, I pre-pulled every seed that's getting planted today in the garden, not just in here, but everywhere in the garden today, so that I don't have to dig through the binders as I'm going. I have everything right here. So I'm gonna try to do squash in here. Again, I did try to do squash last year and it got really super stressed from the heat. It was the only squash that wasn't affected by the squash vine borer, even though I have the doors open all the time. They didn't make it in here, but it was just really stressed. Like it tried to produce, and then I think it wasn't getting enough pollinators and I wasn't hand pollinating enough. But you can do any kind of squash in a hill. You can do like 3 or 4 seeds in a hill 4 or 5 feet apart, but I'm just doing a single squash in the corner. So I'm not going to hill it. I am going to do 3 seeds just to ensure good germination, and that's about 1 inch deep. But then I will thin it down to 1 seed. So in this spot in between my 2 peppers, I'm gonna do some zinnias. I do have this new one to try, the Pumila mix from Hudson Valley Seed Co. And I also have these California Giants, which got so huge last year, but they were gorgeous. So I'm thinking with the height that we have in here, it might be nice to do the California Giants in this garden and do the other ones outside. I actually have zinnias in 2 spots in this bed. So they're gonna go right here, and they're also gonna go down there. So zinnias will go 1/4 inch deep. They're pretty big seeds for just going 1/4 inch deep, and it's 3 seeds per 12 inches. And you're supposed to thin that down, but I may not. I usually kind of like them to be a little bit crowded. Right there, and then I have them one spot over from the, so right here. And that's the zinnias in. And right here, I'm actually going to try to do some sunflowers. I have two varieties. I have the Teddy Dwarf sunflowers, and I also have this Desire Red from Burpee, which I planted last year and accidentally only planted one, and it was so pretty. So I think I'm gonna do a few more. They're pretty compact for a sunflower, which is like what I prefer. So unless I'm doing like a mammoth gray, I want it to be pretty small. This one hits about 22 to 28 inches tall, and we want these about 1 inch deep, 8 inches apart. So you could actually probably do, let's do 3. I'm doing 2 in each hole. Again, I'm just concerned about germination, and I want to be sure. I only get 1 chance in my short growing season on a lot of these things. And then the only other thing we have to do is another squash in that corner, and we're gonna hedge our bets and do a Zephyr summer squash. So we have the, what did we put in the other corner? Rise and Shine, and this is the Zephyr. Okay, it doesn't look like much just yet, but that's this whole bed planted out. It really didn't take that long. One thing I love about this nursery this year is they actually had these 6-packs where every pepper is different. So I like to get a 4-pack of like jalapenos and chichitos because I know I want to grow a lot of them, but when it comes to bell peppers, having that variety is really exciting. So I actually have a bunch of different ones here. I have a yellow bell pepper, a red bell pepper, purple beauty, an orange blaze, lilac, and California Wonder. So all of these are sweet peppers, bell peppers, like your typical just regular grocery store pepper, but we've got 2 purple varieties with that lilac and the purple beauty. So I think I'm gonna save the lilac for outside, and green peppers generally do fine for me outside, but I have a really hard time getting red and yellow peppers to ripen to red and yellow because it doesn't get hot enough here. So I'm very interested to see planting them in the greenhouse if they do a little bit better. We'll do the yellow bell back in this corner, and we have our red bell right here. Oops, no, right here. And then there's another one right here, so we'll do the purple beauty right there. These have great root systems. I'm actually gonna do a shishito in here. Shishitos were my favorite peppers that I grew last year. And we'll do another jalapeno. Like shishito and banana peppers have like the most variety in the way that I like to cook. So you can also go through before you plant them in assembly line style, again, just taking off those bottom first true leaves because they're gonna touch the soil, they're gonna yellow, they're gonna fall off anyway, so we might as well just get them out of here. All right, so my Olla container is obviously a little bit in the way here of my actual corner, but the plant can work around that. I don't loosen the roots on my transplants ever unless they're like severely root bound to start. It just doesn't seem necessary with ones like this where they're just so happy. I've been loving the Hori Hori. Can't believe I went as long as I did without it, to be honest. Okay. That's our peppers. We're doing a couple things different in this bed that I'm excited about, which we'll get to momentarily. I'm actually gonna be trying a little bit of basil in here. I'm not gonna do a whole bunch because I don't know how it's gonna do since basil tends to bolt and get stressed in the heat. But I started so much basil. I started like almost 70 basil plants, so we're just gonna try it with these guys. I won't do much, I'll just do like 1. This actually has 2 plants in it, but they'll be okay right next to each other like that. All right, some basil. I'm gonna do 2 Swiss chard in this bed. These are often multi-sown in the pack too, so you can sometimes get more than it actually looks like you're getting, but then of course you risk disturbing the roots. I did a yellow one in here already, so I'll do a pinkish red guy. All right, we're just gonna pop one right here and the other one right here. They're a little dramatic. They're gonna flop over, but they will bounce back. So for seeds, we have one kind of interesting one going in here, and that is because I'm still determined to get a trailing plant to grow up on the rafters in here. So we're actually gonna try something, but I'm noticing a mistake on my plan here because I put it in this front corner and I really should put it where I put this basil. So we're gonna move the basil. because I really want the trailing plant to have easy access to climb up the wall here. So we are doing Malabar spinach. This is kind of just like an edible green that a lot of people use ornamentally because the berries, you can't eat the berries, but it's beautiful and just creates this nice leafy structure that's really heat tolerant. And Malabar spinach goes about 1/4 inch deep as well. I'll just pop that there. It can trail up there, hopefully. It grew last year. It did pretty well, so I'm hopeful that it will do well again. And this is a really great heat-loving plant. If you're looking for a trailing plant that is also edible and can work in the heat, I highly recommend Malabar spinach. Okay, I don't know why that leaves that corner totally empty. I'm kind of going off script here. I was like, what else is new? But I've decided to try a cantaloupe again this year. I got one really delicious cantaloupe last year, and I have the room, so I want to see how it does in the greenhouse. So I'm doing Hearts of Gold melon, and this goes about 1/4 inch deep. It's a pretty small seed. I'll just pop that right in the corner. And then in this corner, I'm going to do my sugar baby watermelon. I love sugar babies. They are much easier, in my opinion, to tell when they're ready than other varieties, and more just like consistently good. These go about 1/2 inch deep. So our front row is totally planted now. So then we're looking at the back, which just needs sunflowers and zinnias. So we'll mix it up with the Dwarf Teddy sunflower this time, get some yellow in here. But I'm gonna keep using the California Giants blend on these zinnias because you get different colors, like it's a mix. Got our zinnias in there. I love these Dwarf Teddy sunflowers. So cute, so small. These can go 1/4 to 1/2 inch deep. And they just keep popping off little blossoms all summer. All right, that's bed number 2 done. This is going so fast. All right, moving on to our final bed. So again, we have a couple interesting things happening in here that aren't happening in the other beds in terms of some trailing plants. But we're gonna start with our transplants, of course. So for that, we've got just a few more peppers and Swiss chard in here. And I'm gonna pop some celosia in this bed because we didn't put any in the other bed. I think I'm just gonna do a couple more of the jalapenos in here because I have 4 more of those that can go outside. So for peppers in this bed, we're going far back corner again, and then center third right here. There. Let's do some Swiss chard. I'm gonna try these guys that like barely have any roots, see how they do. Because I really need these outside. I forgot to do marigolds in the second bed, so we'll add those, but I'm also gonna put them in this bed too. This is a good example of like the clearance ones. Like they have a bunch of like blooms that need to be deadheaded, but they're gonna bounce back and be fine. They're just not cosmetically perfect in this moment, so they're not good for them to sell. I'm gonna put a basil in that far corner. I'm just gonna hop back over here really quick and pop in the marigolds that are supposed to go in. Three more marigolds will go into this bed. See, this one is a little bit more root bound. And so in this case, you don't have to, but you can just kind of rip off the bottom roots that are like circling and just kind of pinch and loosen right there. Now we just have some seeds. So in this far corner, I'll show you what I mean. We're doing a bean. I don't know if this is gonna work, but rather than continuing to do more zinnias and sunflowers, I'm gonna try some straw flower in this back corner. I can't remember if I normally transplant or direct sow that one. Oh my God, I just poured like half the bag on there. Okay. I'll try some of the Pumila mixed zinnias here. I also have some Tom Thumb straw flower. And I'm gonna try to do another sugar baby off of this far corner. So if this works, I'm gonna have plants trailing all throughout the greenhouse. And then last but not least, we have a bean that will actually produce in really high temps because a lot of them get stressed and they will stop producing when it hits like 85 degrees. We're gonna be doing rattlesnake bean. I trialed this in the greenhouse last year and it did really, really well. It's gonna trail right up the rafters and give us some beautiful green foliage as well as some beans we can actually eat. So these will go in this back corner again so that it's just easy for them to reach the wall and climb up that toward the rafters. And I'm doing them about 4 inches apart, and I'm just gonna do 4 of them in this corner. All right, let's get these watered. I won't do a ton of surface watering in the greenhouse now that I have the Ollas, but with the seeds just starting and the soil still being a little hydrophobic from storage, I'm just gonna give it a boost. Of course, you could do other heat-loving crops in here. There's so many different kinds of peppers you can grow, as well as tomatoes are really great for greenhouse growing. Tomatoes are kind of messy for greenhouse growing, in my opinion. So really great crop if you're just looking for heat-loving plants in general. In a greenhouse, not my favorite thing because finding a way to trellis them, pruning them, all the pollen dust everywhere just wasn't ideal for me. So I'd rather have them outside anyway because they'll wind pollinate a lot easier, but it can be a good way to help prevent diseases if you want to keep your tomatoes contained. You can also do cucumbers inside, but again, with the trellising, it just wasn't something I wanted to deal with heavy plants vining up onto these rafters. So that's everything. The greenhouse is finally planted out. I'm so excited because we get to watch all these tiny little baby plants thrive over the next few months. But I would love to hear what your favorite heat-loving crops are in the comments. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss future videos like this one, and I'll see you next time.